For most of the Roman Empire, eating breakfast would have made you look like a glutton. The Romans ate one real meal a day, right around noon, and they were deeply suspicious of anyone who needed more. Historians say they saw multiple meals as a sign of weak self-control, not health. Now compare that to your day. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, same three, every day, without question. You've never once stopped to ask where that number came from. So where did it come from? Rewind far enough, and the question barely makes sense. On the shores of what's now the Sea of Galilee, in Israel, archaeologists found the remains of a settlement called Ohalo II, nearly 23,000 years old. Small huts built around hearths, and scattered around those hearths, over 140 different types of seeds and nuts, along with bones from birds, fish, and small mammals. These were hunter-gatherers, and they ate whenever food showed up. Not 3 times a day, not twice. Whenever. Some days they feasted, some days they didn't eat at all. A mealtime would have meant nothing to them because eating wasn't a routine. It was a result. Then, around 10,000 BCE, agriculture took hold across the Fertile Crescent, in what's now Iraq, Iran, and Turkey. For the first time, people had a food supply reliable enough to stay in one place. Settlements formed. Cooking got more complex. But even then, nobody had landed on 3 meals a day. It still came down to whatever your culture and your daylight hours allowed. The ancient Egyptians usually ate twice. A light breakfast of bread and beer, and a heavier evening meal with lentils and vegetables. The Greeks had 3 named meals: akratisma in the morning, ariston at midday, deipnon at night. But plenty of people skipped 1 or 2, and none of it ran on a fixed clock. And the Romans, as you already heard, mostly stuck to 1. Their single big meal, cena, happened around noon. Breakfast barely existed, and was treated more like a snack than a real event. Centuries later, when European settlers reached the Americas, they were stunned by how Native Americans ate. Meals shifted with the seasons. People fasted when food was scarce. There was no fixed schedule at all. The settlers called this uncivilized, and that judgment quietly helped push the European 3-meal habit out across the rest of the world. But the real turning point wasn't cultural, it was mechanical. Since at least the 1500s, the British Royal Navy fed sailors on a strict 3-meal structure: breakfast, a midday main meal, and a lighter dinner. Because hard physical labor at sea needed fuel on a predictable schedule. It was practical, not moral. Then came the moment that locked it in for everyone else. Starting around 1760, the Industrial Revolution swept through Britain and spread across Europe and North America. For the first time in history, huge numbers of people weren't working loose. Seasonal hours on a farm. They were clocking into factories with a fixed schedule and 1 break in the middle of the day. Breakfast before the shift. Lunch on that 1 break, dinner after clocking out. 3 meals a day wasn't a discovery about human biology. It was a scheduling solution for factory life. Breakfast, specifically, had a rockier road. The word literally means to break the night's fast, but in medieval Christian Europe, eating before morning mass was discouraged, so a real breakfast was slow to catch on. Working a 12-hour industrial shift on an empty stomach, though, wasn't a spiritual virtue anymore. It was a liability, so breakfast became mandatory. And then in the 1920s and 30s, a cereal manufacturer named John Harvey Kellogg spent a fortune convincing the public that breakfast was the most important meal of the day. Some of that was nutrition science. A lot of it was simply that cereal companies needed people eating breakfast every single morning. So does your biology actually want 3 meals? Here's where it gets interesting. Your body runs on a circadian rhythm, an internal 24-hour clock. And research shows the timing of your meals changes how your blood sugar, insulin, and fat cells behave. In the morning, cortisol rises, and your body gets remarkably efficient at converting food into usable energy instead of storing it as fat. Eat that same meal late at night, and blood sugar spikes higher, sleep gets worse, and more of it ends up stored. Even your hunger hormones, ghrelin and leptin, follow this rhythm. Your body starts anticipating a meal before you've taken a single bite. What actually seems to matter isn't the number 3 specifically. 2 meals, 3 or 4 can all work, as long as most of your eating happens while there's still daylight. But biology is only half of it. For over 23,000 years, humans haven't gathered around food just to refuel. They've gathered to connect. Long before factories or cereal ads existed, a shared meal was how a group signaled trust and safety to each other. Back when eating alone could genuinely mean you'd been cut off from the people who kept you alive. People who eat regularly with others consistently report feeling happier and more connected. And 3 meals a day, whatever invented it, hands you 3 built-in chances a day to do something deeply human. So why 3 meals? Because sailors needed a schedule. Because factories needed predictable breaks. Because medieval Christians weren't supposed to eat before church. Because a cereal company needed you buying breakfast. And because underneath all of it, Your biology happened to already run on a rhythm that mostly lines up anyway. 3 meals a day was never a law of nature. It's a few hundred years of religion, ships, factories, marketing, and human biology all landing on the same number, mostly by accident. And somewhere in there, a Roman would still look at your dinner plate tonight and quietly assume you have a problem. Tonight, when you sit down for dinner like billions of people before you, at least now you'll know exactly why you're doing it, and exactly how recently someone invented the reason.